listening to the Power of Inspiration and Awakening Radio with Julia Griffin. To master a higher frequency for new state of mind. Once you walked in a forest of splendor in which everything you did and everything you thought was aligned. It is possible at this time to begin to return to the old knowledge. Intuitive healer and manifester Julia Griffin is here to talk about this unique time in history when all sentient beings, animals, plants, trees, and the earth are intent on creating this change. The wolves awakened her to the most incredible light, which opened gifts and brought knowledge that she longs to share. You are creators, and you are born to be creators of beauty, possibility, and joy. Join Julia on a journey into a beautiful and magical world where amazing possibilities exist. Let us help open the door. The Power of Inspiration and Awakening with Julia Griffin starts right now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Julia Griffin. You're listening to the Power of Inspiration Awakening on Transformation Talk Radio. I'm really excited today because we have a wonderful guest. She wrote a book, Money Does Grow on Trees. And what is amazing about her book to me is that it's also her journey into authenticity and who she really is. But the cool thing about it is she used this energy to create an abundant life, prosperity, and she tells us how to do it. But more than that, when you read the book, you can see this is a person who's aligned with who she really is. And she's talking about using those gifts so that we express them in the physical world. So let me tell you about Ezra. As a transformational coach and yoga teacher, Ezra Ogut, I think I said it right, has helped people worldwide to discover their power to live the life they choose. She shows them how to experience their own abundance through one-on-one coaching and workshops. Along with her husband and business partner, Ike, she helps people to move into this transformation of creating a life that they want in the world. They have pioneered this coaching in Turkey. Ezra holds a bachelor's degree in English literature from Turkey's University and a film and television certification from UCLA. And she's also a certified instructor of Kundalini Yoga. Ezra resides with her husband in Los Angeles and Kauai, where they work online to train coaches around the world while continuing to write. So here's a little bit of the story of the book. She was a hardworking shoe sales girl who, in her own words, despised money and all that it represented. So it's a very strange backstory because she became a millionaire. I think she works 4 hours a day. And she put all these things in her book. Money Does Grow on Trees, the myths we create and live by. So you'll hear some of these methods that she has of breaking through self-limiting myths and creating the life that you want. So welcome, Ezra.
Thank you so much for such a beautiful introduction.
Well, I know you're a beautiful person. I read your book. And there were places where I thought, I'll just flip through this and get the main point. And then I was like, oh, this was really interesting. I love what was happening in her life. I was like, okay, I'll slow down and read the whole chapter. Pretty exciting. So tell us why you decided to write this book. It's a long book. It has a lot of exercises and a lot of space for self-exploration.
Well, it was actually even a longer book. This is the edited version of it, because I think I have this thing that, I just want to give it all and give all the exercises I know. And of course, you cannot do that in a book. It's limited. But, interestingly, I started writing this book way before the pandemic. So I didn't know that we were kind of worldwide going to get into such a spiral in terms of prosperity and abundance and certain limitations. My inspiration was really the certification programs that we do with my husband. We work together. He's also an author. And our certification programs last for about 1.5 years. So it's kind of like a school. And we just saw so many transformations and jumps of like hundreds of people that it was just so inspiring to me, because most of these people kind of moved way faster than me and my husband did. So it was like, we're teaching them, and then through their jumps and their speed, they're teaching us back in terms of like, wow, this can be done this way. It can happen even faster, and so on and so forth. And this was so inspirational, but we were doing it in Turkish. Most of our clientele are Turkish around the world. And so I'm like, I just want to open these teachings up to English as well. And that's why I wrote the book. And it kind of has like it's like kind of a mini workshop of the certification. And I feel like if the people really do the exercises and really internalize it, rather than just like it being about reading a book, changes can happen in their lives. And I'm seeing those kind of reports from the readers already.
I thought when I was reading it, and I think it was about a third of the way through, I thought this was her dharma. This is one of the things that she's come here to teach people to do. And it's this very odd thing, wherever your karma is or wherever you're stuck and you have resistance, if you overcome that, you can help other people overcome it. In a sense, that becomes your dharma, what you came here to do.
Exactly. I totally agree. And money was one of my main struggles. I mean, I didn't come from a poor family necessarily, not a very rich family either. But I remember even being a teenager and, just getting an allowance was a problem. It was like this emotional kind of, turmoil kind of a thing. And so, throughout my life, I just had this money struggle. And it was around my mid-30s when, without realizing, I didn't know what to call it back then. But I think this is one of the most important things later when I met up with my mentor that he taught me. I used my being power. And there was a moment in time where I was so sick and tired of struggling financially and just not even knowing if I'm going to make rent. I'm young, not being able to do many things. Even like I would get upset because I would go to a bookstore and maybe want to buy 5 books and I couldn't. It had to be 1. And there came a point where I'm like, what? I am done with the struggle. I don't want this anymore. And that's the moment, which we now call being choice. I made a different being choice. And I decided that I will belong to abundance. And then after that point only did my mentor enter into my life, teach me what he had to teach, made me see the blockages that I had, showed me clearly how I had created very successfully the lack of abundance through certain things I decided to believe as early as 7, 8, 9 years old. So when I saw that I wasn't a victim of my situation, it wasn't because I wasn't good enough, it wasn't because I wasn't, I couldn't be successful. No, I decided at as early as 7 years old that money and love don't go together. And then my second belief system was that only, the good people are the ones that stay away from money, or spiritual people stay away from money. Now, if I have these 2 belief systems that I'm walking around with, like if you could, we kind of type in these belief systems like a computer into our own, we create our own scenarios, and then we get to be the actors and actresses and everybody else to help us live the scenario we've created. And so, of course, when I make money a bad thing, I'm not going to get it, allow it to come near my life. So I would, have really successful situations. I would do what I did really well, but it would always be a situation where I couldn't match up with the money, either supposedly because I didn't have a work permit, or it would be a really well-doing company, last minute, doing a film project would crash and then they wouldn't be able to pay me, although I worked really hard and, had good contributions. So this all looks like kind of bad luck in the outside, but no, it was my manifestation.
Yeah,
So
I want to say that a different way for people who are listening. You may not resonate or understand this on the level of money, but everyone has had a day, at least a day, where they were connected with their inner self and everyone was wonderful to you. Everything went well. All the things you wanted fell into place. And then people will say a week later, and then it just stopped happening. It didn't stop happening. You weren't connected to your being anymore.
Yeah. So I clearly saw how I was the creator of my own, reality. And that was very empowering. It kicked me out of a state of feeling like a victim. And it reminded me I'm all powerful. And so I'm like, oh, okay, if I could create the lack of money so successfully, I can create the abundance of money as successfully. So that was kind of, the turning point. And it was just ironic because while coaching with my mentor, I figured out how much I hated money. I wasn't really aware previously. And so it was ironic how the thing I hated the most became my most kind of wake up call to how powerful each and every one of us are based on who we choose to be and what we choose to belong to.
How long did it take you when you started working with your mentor for things to change?
It took about 2.5 years to kind of get to a point, if I remember correctly. Yeah, 2.5 years. Because what would happen is, successful steps started previous, but I'm saying like in terms of a steady flow of abundance opening up took about 2.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Because there would be like huge manifestations and then it would disappear. It would all start going really well and then it would disappear. And I wasn't understanding previous to my mentor why that would happen. But our egos are very powerful. So even when we make a being choice to step outside of our last reality creation, step outside of the box, our egos can be very good at convincing us to come back to the old reality. So it took me 2.5 years to understand how the ego works, how the ego resists the new reality, how the ego can trick you despite your new being choice to go back to your old reality, and how to overcome the resistance of the ego to step into the new reality. So that was like, it took practice.
And this is something that I love about what you talk about, is you have to do that on every level as you become more awake. But I think it's really super important that we're talking about financial abundance because very few people do. So we're going to go ahead and take a break. We've been talking with Ezra Ogut about creating abundance and prosperity, and she's sharing her insights about freedom and abundance and how you can get there. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Hello, everyone. I'm Julia Griffin at onetrueself.com, onetrueself.com. You're listening to The Power of Inspiration and Awakening on Transformation Talk Radio. I have a very special guest today. She wrote Money Does Grow on Trees. She's telling us how to move into our inner being to create what we want, not only financially, but on a higher level and spiritually as well. So Ezra, would you tell us some more about being and how that's important with what we create in life?
Yes. So the being power, which is actually coined by my mentor, Daryl Rutherford, like I said, when I made the choice, I didn't even kind of consciously know what was going on. And then hearing it again from him after having experienced it, I'm like, that's what it is. So this being power is something that we're all born with. So we don't need to go to a course to learn it. We don't need to be so-called spiritual to practice it. Actually, whether we realize it or not, we're practicing it on a daily basis through the decisions we make and the choices we make. Sometimes because of limitations, belief system limitations, we go in the direction of the unpreferred. And sometimes when we get that energy, we're like, no, this, out of this contrast, I'm becoming very clear as to what I prefer. And once we choose to belong to what we prefer, everything that belongs to that new being choice has to be given by the universe. So it's like once we decide to get pregnant, let's say, we get pregnant and then we don't worry about like, oh my God, how am I going to grow this baby? How is this baby going to grow? No, the universal intelligence takes care of the baby's growth. All we had to decide was, are we going to belong to being a mother or are we going to belong not to being a mother? So one good way, and this being choice thing is so super easy, but at the same time, super hard because our ego won't allow us to see what a simple concept it is. So when my, mentor would explain this to me, and I'd be like, Daryl, but how? What do I do to make a being choice? What do I do? What do I do? You see, again, the mind is like doing, and it absolutely has nothing to do with doing. And he would say, Ezra, how would you jump into a pool? And I'm like, well, I would just jump. I just like to get wet and jump. And he's like, well, that's exactly how you make a being choice. So it took us a while to kind of ground it. And even when we do practice our being power to create an entirely different reality, oftentimes soon after we create the reality, we forget it. We forget that we had such a power, as if it never existed. So in the 20 years of my mentoring with my mentor, same with my husband, we would do the mentoring, you know, all three of us. I don't know how many countless times after, I don't know how many countless miracles, I would go back to my, you know, teacher, and I'm like, well, how do I make a being choice about this subject now? How? And he'd be like, well, the part of you that says how is the part of you that's resisting to belong to something different. Even the way that I came to America, for many, many years, since I was 16, I wanted to study in America. And my parents, you know, they didn't kind of want me to come, be here. You know, I was so far away from Turkey and so on and so forth. So I spent 5-6 years just wanting to come, wanting. And I think the story is a good story to express how there's a huge difference between wanting something versus choosing something. Mm-hmm. When we're in the place of wanting, we keep on recreating the reality of simply wanting, but not having. And finally, you know, I finished university in Turkey. I was working in a TV station. And there was a moment in time when I'll never forget, where I'm pouring some coffee from a coffee machine. And at that moment, I'm like, what am I doing here? I don't want to live here for the rest of my life. I don't want to give up on my dreams. I am going to America. And I said it with all of my being. It was a decision, like almost on a cellular level. It's not just an intellectual decision. After that choice, all the crazy doors opened up for me. I found a scholarship from the company I was working. I really wanted to study in UCLA. I had $2,000 in savings and no permission to go as a 23-year-old anywhere by myself. But I saw that UCLA has a certification program, which is not thousands of dollars, but just $7,000 back then. I found a scholarship. And within 3 weeks of making that being choice, and with that, all the doors of the universe opening to support that decision, I found myself in Los Angeles. You know, so this is how powerful it is. And the same thing happened with abundance. And there was a learning curve. There was a lot of manifestation, demanifesting, manifesting, demanifesting, because I had to retrain my ego to get out of the belief system that, you know, all people that are rich are evil. And if you have money, you cannot be spiritual. And if you have money, you cannot have love. Like there was a lot in there.
I know. Well, I can see that you definitely overcame those beliefs. And I think it's important that you're saying that, and you're saying that now, because there are so many light workers and good people who deserve abundance. And this is a way that they can combine those two things. I was thinking about your story. After 9/11, I decided that I wanted to write about spiritual things. And I wrote to an online magazine. I had, to that date, published one article, although I had written a lot for nonprofits. They said, could we see one article? So I sent it. And then I had a job and I started writing 4 or 5 articles every month. But I made up my mind. I thought, look at how the world is. What difference does it make if I succeed or fail? I'll just write in these people until I find something I can do to help.
Beautiful. There you go. And then everything that matched your new being choice came into your life almost effortlessly.
Almost effortlessly. Yeah.
So, yeah. And, you know, everything has as much meaning as we put onto it. Nothing has a meaning by itself. We're the ones who upload meanings into things like money or marriage, or what a man is supposed to be, what a woman is supposed to be. And, you know, if I like to look at money like oxygen, it's available to abundance is available to everybody. It's not, the resources aren't limited, although that's what we get taught from the time that we're very, very young. So just like, you know, with oxygen, we wouldn't blame ourselves if we're breathing, really well and deeply and getting a lot of oxygen into the body. We wouldn't say like, oh my God, just because, I'm breathing too much oxygen, other people are being deprived. No. And neither when we're breathing deep are the people that are not allowing too much oxygen and deep breaths to come into themselves. That's their choice. It has nothing to do with what we're doing. So in that sense, abundance is available to all of us because the universe doesn't lack abundance. Nature doesn't lack abundance. It's our thoughts that separate us from that abundance to be. And just because we're having more, others do not have less because of us.
That's a beautiful thing, because I think some people feel that way, like they're taking what other people should have.
Yeah.
I also think, one thought that I would like to see go into the mind of light workers is the money is probably better in your hands. You'll buy crystals, you'll buy things that are organic, you'll help other people. The way that consumers shop will change because of your having money, and your psyche will change because you'll be in a higher level of consciousness.
Yeah. And I think one big way to solve any problem we're having, whether that's a lack of abundance or a lack of love or a lack of relationship or whatever it might be, instead of looking at it like, we're powerless in the face of a problem, to look at it from the perspective of, oh, I created this problem. And if I'm not looking like I'm solving it, what's my benefit or what's my gain from having this problem reoccur in my life? So in my case, for money, my gain from creating the lack of money again and again was to make sure I stay in the side of love. You see, and until I can crack my belief system and limitation, I couldn't have allowed myself really to belong to abundance.
Mm-hmm.
So, with relationships too, we see that sometimes, a person is complaining, oh, I don't have a relationship. I haven't had a relationship for 10 years, and when you go kind of deep and you're like, okay, well, what could your gain be? And then they'll come up with, it takes a bit of coaching, obviously, but then they'll be like, oh my God, I believe that if I get into a relationship, I'll lose my freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So if the freedom is more important than the relationship, and you have a belief system where the two are conflicting, then you're going to create the lack of a relationship, not because you can't have one, it's because there's a part of you that doesn't want it.
Right. So it's working on that part of yourself. Okay, we're going to go to break, and when we come back, were you going to lead us in an exercise to move into being, I think?
Sure.
And we've been talking with Ezra Ogut about creating abundance and prosperity. She's sharing her insights about it, teaching us how we create things in our lives that we don't want through inner conflict, and some of the ways that we can move through it so that we have a more beautiful life. So stay with us and learn more. Hello, everyone. I'm Julia Griffin at One True Self, onetrueself.com, and you're listening to The Power of Inspiration and Awakening on Transformation Talk Radio. I'm here with author Ezra Ogut. She wrote Money Does Grow on Trees, and she's going to teach us how to grow some money on our own trees. So we're going to move into an exercise of experiencing our being. So Ezra, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Well, it's a very easy exercise that you guys can just do writing down. And this is because, with our teacher, we would always say, how? And he's like, well, how would you jump into a pool? It's like, duh. But we're like, how can we ground it more? So when we opened up the certification program with my husband, we came up with this very simple exercise. And we realized that, if we can just get people to remember the times in the past where they've used their own being power to make a huge, change, just like how you're talking about that happened to you in 9/11, then even the remembrance of that can take us outside of our box, of our current reality. So what you would do is you'd get a piece of paper, and on the left side, you write down maybe 3 or 4 major problems you've had in the past where it was really kind of tough for you. Then in the middle column, you would write what happened once that problem got resolved. Like for me, for example, it would be the example of how I came to America. For 6 years, it was something I wanted. And it was like the furthest thing possibly from happening at the time. And then bam, in 3 weeks, I was in Los Angeles. That would be the example. So you write the problem, you write in the middle column what happened after it got resolved. Then on the third column next to it, you try to remember the moment in time where you changed your mind about the problem, where there was a being change. And if you do this exercise, you will see that this being power we're talking about, yes, you've applied it all the time. And once you reactivate it regarding a problem you might be having right now, you can just apply it as easily. So that's one exercise I want to share. And the second one is, how do we kind of bring ourselves to a being state of what it is that we prefer? So for abundance, really, it's again as simple as beginning to feel prosperous and abundance before it ever even shows up in your life. And this is like, again, so simple sounding, but we're so powerful that things can be that simple. So for me, one of the biggest changes, and this is kind of something, I made up, I didn't learn from my mentor, but in 2007, me and my husband, entering the 2007 new year, me and my husband, we decided that every day for a year, we're going to do our gratefulness exercise. And the specific way that I like to do it is for about 15 minutes, be grateful for whatever's already in my life. But like, let's say it's one subject and then at least 10, 15 sentences. So it's not like, oh, I'm grateful, I have a house, I'm grateful, I'm healthy, I'm grateful, my children are fine. No, it's not like that. We want to create like a emotional momentum. So if it were to be about prosperity, basically just being grateful, maybe, 20, 25 sentences of, oh, I'm so grateful I have my car. I'm so grateful. Today when I was looking to see where I can get coffee, a stranger just had an extra coffee and said, hey, would you like one? I'm so grateful. It doesn't have to be just about money either. I'm so grateful that I can travel the world. I'm so grateful I just had an amazing vacation in Hawaii. I'm so grateful. Like even when I'm saying it, I can feel already the energetics rising. So 15 minutes, and not to go robotic about it. It has to be like organic, and you kind of have to like think of like, oh, what can I be grateful for today? What happened this week? So that it's like different every time. So 15 minutes of that, and then minimum, and it can be more. And then in the second part, you be grateful for what you would like to happen as if it's already happened. So with my husband, we would be like, let's say back then I'm teaching yoga and maybe I was making like $800, or $1,000 a month. And I'd be like, oh, I'm so grateful. I'm making $1,300. I'm so grateful. This is just happened so easily. I'm so grateful. It was just so effortless. Like it hadn't happened yet, but I would just talk myself into it with a great sensation of gratitude, as if that's the reality I'm experiencing. And magic can happen from this. I mean, the crazy manifestations out of this just one exercise, I can't even it would take hours to share. But
I was going to say, this benefits other people too. Like one thing, I'm lucky because physically I usually feel pretty wonderful. But in the morning, I go outside with my coffee and I sit on the deck, whether it's cold or raining or whatever it is. And I always think, I'm so grateful to be alive. And then from that point, everything gets better. But the odd thing is, some of my clients started telling me, I just woke up this morning and I thought, it's so wonderful to be alive, because we transmit these higher vibratory states of mind to other people.
Exactly. And that year, and also including 2008, and if you remember, 2008 was a big economic crisis again. Mm-hmm. In 2007, me and my husband both, we were doing different things. I had just started coaching. He was doing voiceover stuff in Turkey. We were in Turkey at the time. In just 1 year, we increased our income by 10-fold.
amazing.
So yeah, it was $1,000 and then it became $15,000 each, from just doing, this exercise. So, and then, how we focus on a daily basis, where's our focus? Are we on lack, or are we focusing on abundance?
Mm-hmm.
And it really is like planting a seed and then taking care of your plant by watering it. Are we watering the have, or there is, or are we watering, oh, I don't have. So in the certification program, when the clients get this, and there's like some really amazingly inspirational stories. One client, she barely had enough money for the first level of the certification. She, I think, borrowed it from a bank or something like that. And she had exactly $7 in her savings account. And when she got it, how focus is so important, and began to apply, when her $7 of savings, imagine, became $14, which to, everyone is like, well, $14, who cares about that? Instead of saying, who cares about it? I only have $14. She said to herself, oh, I just increased my wealth by 100%. Yeah. What, and within a year and a half, she had $60,000 of savings in her bank, and she bought herself a home.
That's amazing.
So that's how powerful our focus is, no matter what's going on in our lives, in terms of creating the next step, the next reality, regardless of what is right now. It really doesn't matter what is going on right now.
It's rewriting that negative dialogue that comes from the ego. It's integrating the part of you that is stuck and seeing life in that limited victim role.
Exactly. And there's another really cute story of a nurse we have. She's just doing amazing work now in Turkey. I mean, this is like just a silly one, seemingly silly one, but as they say, God is hidden in the details. Mm-hmm. So how do we interact with the everyday details of our lives? So she also got the importance of this focus thing. So one day, at the beginning of the certification, she comes home. She's a nurse, has a stressful life. So she comes home and there's just one cup of soup in the fridge. And she's like, oh, I just have one. I'm so starving and tired, and I just have one cup of soup. And then she's like, okay, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go to the have. So she takes the cup of soup. And she begins thinking of all the beautiful things that have gone into that cup of soup. She's like, oh, the tomatoes in here are what my mom sent from the farm. The olive oil in here is comes from my uncle's blah, 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 olive yard. And she's just like in this mode of appreciating this just cup of soup. As soon as she gets into the appreciation, there's a knock on the door. A neighbor shows up with all this food for her. So she has a feast. So there's just a small little example of, as long as we stay in there already is. And in gratitude, it's impossible for the universe not to match up what it is that we're feeling.
And that actually happened to me right after I was divorced and didn't have much money. I thought, well, there are apples in the trees. There's food for today. I'll get paid in 4 or 5 days. I've got 2 kids, but I just won't eat as much. It's fine. And we went out because I thought, I'm not going to stay home. I'll take the children. We'll go for a walk somewhere. And when we came back, some church had like a huge picnic or feast, but very few people showed up. And my neighbor took a bunch of the food and put it on my porch. So it was like everything I needed for a week.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The vibration changes and you decide what you want and it comes. I mean, exactly. That God energy wants to fill you up and wants to give you love and wants to give you abundance. It's just to some degree, getting out of the fear and the resentment is what opens the door. And exactly. Thinking about what's good does that.
Exactly. So it really is kind of ridiculously simple, yet when we're inside our boxes of perception, it seems like, oh my God, this is impossible. And I know that feeling because I lived the, oh my God, this is impossible for 35 years regarding prosperity.
I know. It's like you're in a box and you keep running into the wall and all you really have to do is take the lid off the box.
And I would get mad when others would tell me, oh, it can be really easy. I'm like, really? Come and live my life and see if it's easy. That's just the way we function.
And that, I think, is just something everyone goes through as part of waking up. But the cool part is that we can wake up. So let's get ready to go to break. We've been talking with Ezra Ogut about money does grow on trees. She has shared 2 exercises with us about how we can get into a state of being and gratitude and how quickly we can actually create abundance and good things in our life. So let's go to break now. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Hello, everyone. I'm Julia Griffin at onetrueself.com, onetrueself.com. You're listening to the Power of Inspiration and Awakening on Transformation Talk Radio, where you can experience a higher vibration and a new state of mind. I'm talking with Ezra Ogut, author of Money Does Grow on Trees, The Myths We Create and Live By. Ezra is going to share another exercise with us, and I think this one is to move through our limitations. So Ezra, go ahead.
Well, thank you so much. As we're summing it up here, I would like to maybe downsize the message to we create our realities, whether we end up liking the results or not. But not liking the results of the realities we create is also fun. It's an important part of the process because meeting up with the results we don't like gives us the clarity and the preference of what it is that we choose. And that's an incredible way to expand and discover who we are. So usually to figure out our belief systems and what it is that we've picked, regarding different subject matters that keeps co-creating our reality, perhaps in a way that we don't prefer anymore, usually takes a bit of coaching to figure out. But one exercise that you can practice at home, and it's also in the book, is regarding whatever subject matter, because the subject is money, let's walk with abundance. So what I would do is close my eyes and really, if the subject matter is abundance, really, really visualize an insanely abundant life, where there's maybe several apartment buildings, maybe real estate, where there's residual income coming, and just, exaggerate. There's the car, the chauffeur, whatever, whatever abundance matches up with in your brain. Now, we're not doing this visualization to become. We're doing this visualization to see, when we put ourselves into that scenario, what is it that bothers us? Because whatever bothers us when we put ourselves into that scenario has a deep connection to what it is that we believe about abundance. So I was doing this with a friend in Istanbul, and I love this example so much. It's kind of a recent one where, she's taken many workshops. She's actually a coach herself, regarding other subjects. And she said to me, Esther, no matter what, I can't seem to overcome this money limitation in my life. I've gone to workshops now for 10, 15 years, and I just can't make it happen. And I said to her, well, instead of looking at it like, oh, I can't make it happen, what if you were to look at it as, oh, I have a gain. I have a benefit from not allowing money into my life. And her thing was she would just make enough to cover her expenses. So she wouldn't be out, but she wouldn't go to a place of creating more. So I said, well, what if actually you don't want to create more? She's like, oh, don't be silly. Of course I want to create more. And I'm like, okay, let's put it to the test. So I got her to close her eyes, and, we put her into an abundant visualization reality. And I'm like, oh, you don't even have to work because you have so many investments and so on and so forth. What's bothering you? And at first she didn't know, but she started sweating. She's sitting in front of me, just instead of being happy, she's, sweating. And I'm like, okay, what's the sweating about? And she's like, oh my God, I'm full of this emotion of shame when I put myself into that reality. And I'm like, okay, so what is the shame about? What's the belief system underneath that's creating the shame? And she just allowed herself to feel it. And she's like, oh my God, I believe that if I have more, because of me, others will have less. So again, as long as you have that belief system, it's not like abundance can't come to your life. That part of you will stop it from coming into your life unless you reframe what abundance means for you. Authentically reframe what it means for you and how you want to be abundant. What's your version of abundance? Because we grow up looking around and sometimes we don't like the examples we see, and we think in our minds like, oh, abundance means I have to be like this person. No. You can be your own person with abundance. So it's about reframing what abundance means for the individual. I think it's a great, great exercise.
I think so too. It's really interesting. I'm going to practice with it. And I'm also going to tell our listeners, you have some great exercises in there that are about pranayama and yoga and using those things to clear your consciousness if they want to study the book. So I know people who've done yoga will love that part of it. So is there anything else that you want to tell them? I mean, obviously, they can read your book, but if there's one thought that you want them to hold, what would that be?
Like I said at the beginning of this segment, that's what came through just after the break. Yes, we do create our realities, whether we enjoy the results or not. And there's nothing going wrong if we are creating something unpreferred. And the jumping board from the unpreferred to the preferred is waking up to our own power, using the contrast, using what's not working as a jumping board to become super clear about what it is that we do prefer. And once we're clear like that, like a white page clear, then we can jump into that reality. Sometimes though, we just have belief systems where our own vision of the next step itself is not very clear. So clarity is essential for speedy creation.
So if you're not clear, work on clarity and make something up and move in that direction.
Yeah, rewrite the story. Yeah, rewrite the story. What is, if you had no limitations, no boundaries, if you could just move beyond the belief systems, what is it that you want to create? Write down that scenario, because your abundance can look very different than anybody else's, or your relationship idea might be very different from anybody else's.
Mm-hmm. So we're already creators. We just want to consciously create. So tell our listeners about any seminars or workshops you have coming up, your website, and how they can find you.
Oh, thank you so much. So our website is www.ikeandesranow.com. That's ikeandesra.now.com. So, they can come to the website. You can leave an email. If you leave your email, we will email you whenever we have a seminar or something coming up. We're not doing anything for 2021, but in 2022, we do intend to do a couple of seminars, begin doing it in English. So we'd love to have you guys there. And the book you can buy from Amazon.
Right. And it's easy to find on Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, Ezra. It's been wonderful. I appreciate the light of your being. Namaste.
Thank you so much.
And you can sign up for my weekly newsletter on my website, onetrueself.com, onetrueself.com, and receive many tips on energetic weather and a higher vibration. So thank you so much for tuning into the Power of Inspiration Awakening show on Transformation Talk Radio. Have a wonderful week, and you can find me here on the second and fourth Wednesdays of every month at 12 noon Eastern, 11 Central, and 9 a.m. Pacific. See you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Power of Inspiration and Awakening Radio with Julia Griffin to master a higher frequency for a new state of mind. Join us next time as Julia takes us deeper into the memory of the moments of light where transcendence and enlightenment emerge. The memory of the jewel of consciousness is always lived within you to tap into waves of energy and create huge changes by imagining the beauty of the vision and desires that are hidden in the heart. Learn to find your way back to nature, beauty, and your own heart, which holds the secrets of your existence and future. To discover more about Julia's adventures, animal communication, and the teachings she brings to every show, visit onetrueself.com. That's onetrueself.com. That's ONE, trueself.com.